All right, everybody, welcome back. Lunch break is complete. The players are fed. We are fed here in the commentary booth. We, of course, being Will Anderson, as I have been all along with you all out there. But for the afternoon, I am joined by top expert Jason Idalski. Jason, welcome into the booth. And what are your thoughts on what Nigel Richards has been able to accomplish so far?
Again, just a confirmation of his being the GOAT. I can't remember. Usually at nationals, it's hard for somebody to start 7-0, much less 17-0. And I am really excited to see how far this goes.
So after the lunch break, Nigel with his perfect 17-0 record, his draw of 4 opponents, you can see Orry Swift, his opponent, a former finalist at the Scrabble Players Championship a couple years back, one of the top players in North America. And Nigel's dance card this afternoon is Orry Swift, Jackson Smiley, Joey Krafchick, and a repeat matchup with Orry in the 4th game of the day. So if he is going to continue his undefeated run through this tournament, he is going to have to earn it against arguably the 3 strongest players right now in his division alongside him. So we can let the players begin at any time. We are ready and excited to see more of the GOAT do battle. So Nigel with the first move, that gives him a little extra winning percentage, Jason, before the game even begins.
Yeah, and he's actually had some close calls here for having a spread of more than 100 per game. He's had a few close scrapes and perhaps surprisingly, seemingly against the lower seeds. So,
and he has drawn pretty unrelentingly well over the course of the tournament, I would say. And another early blank for him. There is one and only one 7-letter word, and look at how quickly it arranges itself on his rack here. The nice thing, though, Jason, is that Orry's rack quite solid as well. So even if Nigel gets his opening bingo of Cindery, which you can see there, Orry will at the very least have toasting through that eye. So it's not going to be a runaway, despite a great opening draw for Nigel here, which we are thankful for, Jason.
Yeah, good. Always a good game when both players can start with the bingo. So Nigel just doing his thing, kind of going through in his head, making sure that this is the only playable one, especially in this lexicon. No other 8s through Cindery, just toasting. I mean, it makes sense. It wouldn't really play through a consonant, and that rack doesn't go through an E. So
yeah, he's thinking about this. It's been over a minute since he has identified this play straight away. Interesting that he's taking some time to think about it, but if you look at where Cindery would score the most points, putting the Y on the double letter score, he might not want to make this really, well, I forgot he opens vertically. Of course, he's going to go ahead and do this positioning, even with the potential of, yeah, if Orry has the Q, maybe he regrets it. If he has the X and a U or another I, he might regret it. But you're getting a few extra points, and anytime your opponent doesn't have those tiles, maybe you're happy to grab 2 extra points here. That's the direction that Nigel goes with this, and I don't think Orry is going to waste any time. This is what you're likely to see. Orry Swift is a fantastic player. He is going to make his obvious plays very, very quickly. And we've seen that, Jason, be a big factor in a lot of these Nigel games on stream.
Just the time issue, or?
Yeah, exactly.
We never sim this position, but do you take the 2 extra points, or do you put it? Do you double the C and prevent the QI XI sort of thing?
I'm probably taking the points here just because, I don't know, when you put the, Cindery, I guess, moving it up the board and placing the C here, there might be other issues with that. I'm thinking that you are placing, for example, an E in this particular spot right here, which is a very good tile to play 8-letter words, especially ending in E. So maybe sometimes you make out much better playing Cindery here, where a bingo to the E is not even close to as high scoring and opens up a triple for your opponent. So there's just so many outcomes that can occur at any given moment that it's hard to over index on just that Q or X issue with the I. And for inability to, you know, judge any better, I'm just taking points. Usually you would just default to points. So Nigel with a great looking set of tiles, but he plays big, which is an indicator, of course, no available bingo. Orry would have loved to see that B find its way out to open space, Jason, as Buckaroo would have gone
Mm.
down. That would have been pretty amazing to see.
I was thinking he might be a little tilted just because Cook doesn't play off of toasting, although you would never expect that to go down. And now,
Yes.
really, not a lot of great options for him here.
Yeah, great point. That toasting and cook, I guess we've got some nice culinary words here. Would have gone down. One of the issues with toasting, that was Ori's only bingo, so he has to play that almost no matter what in that position. There's just no way you can't dump those low point tiles that don't do much else, get 60 points for it. But there was a possibility of Nigel having a huge counterplay in that spot. He didn't. He only plays big for, not that good of a score. But as you say, Jason, it blocked Ori's play of Cook. Orry might be getting set to play Cookie into this Y, potentially. And that would score a solid number of points. But in this particular situation, Nigel again potentially threatening Antrorse through the R. Cookie would block that and force him to look elsewhere for a bingo, which I think he's pretty likely to still.
Yeah, I was gonna say something tells me that Antros isn't going to be the only playable one here.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess an interesting question for the players would be level of confidence in the S hook here. ING words are notoriously difficult for most of us to keep straight. Which ones can take an S? It turns out this one can take an S. So you could definitely see Nigel play something there. Orry, we saw him on stream and we got the intel that Orry actually has these little rhymes or stories that have to do with which ING words actually pluralize with an S. So he probably knows that this does take an S hook, and he can recite his nursery rhyme and figure that out. A lot of players would be somewhat more helpless to know that, Jason.
He needs to teach that to me because that was always a huge weak point of mine. I could never remember which ing words took the S and which ones didn't, and I seem to always guess wrong. so I got to learn this story. I got to learn this story from Orry.
Well, I think there's many. I think there's like 26 stories, one for every letter, or maybe not for the X, but stories for many of the letters. I don't know how many, so he's got a lot of them. And we're just going to have to see that. Nigel surely not going to have any such confusion. Question, I guess, is which of, now that Antrorse has been blocked, what bingo is he going to choose? There are a whole bunch of 7-letter words in this rack: Senator, Santero, Treason, Atoners. He now has Atoners set up. That would be wild if he played this one, Jason. Atoners and Toastings, putting an A in the triple. That just seems insane that he would do that. Surely he will pivot to something else.
Yeah, my thought was Santero seems pretty obvious. You're kind of, creating that corner, really closing the top half of the board. You're not slotting any vowels, which Senator does, giving a potential ZA, etc. Spot for the Z. So Santero seemed pretty smart, but yeah, toners would not only be weird, it would be wrong, even if you have some sort of sense after Cookie that your opponent is vowel heavy, which Orry was, leaving ARU. I still feel like Santero is the right one, and that's the one he's going to go with.
Yeah, he concurs, and down comes Santero. So this game was very close, thanks to The bingo's traded by both players, but Nigel striking back very quickly, and Orry does not look like he's in a position to strike back with a bingo, but he'll still be able to manage a decent score somewhere with the J, and we'll see what he's able to pull out here.
Toastings is being held, by the way.
Oh, all right. It's time for the rhyme recitation here. That's what Orry is likely doing. Also, this is the classic scenario, right? Who's playing this against you? Nigel Richards, right? Are you really going to challenge this? But good on Orry for holding this and trusting his gut. If this would be an amazing time for Nigel to pull a fast one, but that's not really in his repertoire of things that he does. Usually he plays it very, very safe and by the book. And if Nigel's playing something, he's pretty confident that it's valid. Only exceptions are pretty well documented. I've made videos about pretty much all 2 of them, I guess, that I'm aware of. So if you were to do it again, that would immediately be a pretty worthy topic.
Yeah, since we're on your channel, I can say that if you haven't seen Will's video about what if Nigel were evil, and yeah, if he ever takes it upon himself to kind of learn the math and the probability and the risk reward of playing deliberate phonies, heaven help us all. Where 17-0 is going to be almost routine for him, I think. But yeah, Orry, tell him the story. He must have gotten to toast at somewhere in the story, because he did release, and now he's looking at Fanjet, although I don't know if I would play it through that Ian Cindery, and there's really nowhere else for it to go.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, what's
there.
Tim saying here?
Well, Fanjet there slots the J not in exactly the right spot. It does get rid of the F and the J, which are the 2 weakest letters, but I think this is more appropriate for Orry. He's going to play Jurats. This is nice just because you get the triple letter score for the J. I am wondering any reason why not Jaunts or Juntas there to keep the R. FR strikes me as a little bit more synergistic than FN. Maybe there's a reason to keep the N that I'm not currently noticing. I think that might be a slight error otherwise, unless Orry has a great plan for that N. But thematically, I think that was the spot to play, and Orry has come up with a good play there. And a weird draw for him, I have to say.
Yeah, the old high prob FHW draw. Yeah, I was just wondering that myself. Maybe an R easier to bingo through than the N, but then again, you're keeping the other one. So not really seeing a great reason or even a great difference between Jurats, Juntas, and Jaunts.
Yeah, I think in general, the FR combination also works nicely here. You can get a fire, you can get a 4. There's a couple very easy draws that would give you a good score from this A of Santero that opens the board. As Nigel plays Irid for 10, if I'm Orry, I'm loving to see Irid for 10 as opposed to some kind of big, scoring play from the A of Santero or another bingo. I'll take that. And Nigel draws, oddly, the Q and the B and the H to his good bingo leave. So Nigel's going to be slowing down a little bit here. That gives Orry a chance to catch his breath and see if he can make something happen here. Oh, this is crazy, Jason. So Hauf, a valid word, potentially playable through either O, but
setting up the F.
Yeah, I guess you would probably play it here, but leaving the F off so that he can hook it next turn. Unfortunately, this is going to backfire hard as Nigel has Cades in that spot that's going to go down very quickly, I should think, unless there's some better thing for the Q. But I think that was a really clever idea by Orry that's just not going to work in this specific instance.
How many points do you sacrifice by putting it the other way? Because you put it the other way, and Nigel's still going to use the S, but for not nearly as many, while also getting rid of the Q.
That's a
So
good point. So you're
21 versus 26. Yeah, I guess you can't really sacrifice 5 points, can you?
sliding it over, you're saying. Yeah, you can't. I mean, there's only, a couple of the S's are on the board. You could easily catch Nigel without an S and have just no way to even deal with this spot at all. I think that was a great play by Orry that just happened to not work out in this specific instance, as Nigel is going to hit this very commonly seen. If you're out there and you want to learn a couple new Scrabble words that are going to boost your game up quickly, this is a great one, using the Q without a U. 65 points for Nigel here, Jason. That is not what Orry wants to see.
Yeah, somebody in chat posted, "Don't try to out Nigel." Essentially, that was a very Nigel-esque play, and it is too bad that it didn't work out, and that Ori's draw has not really worked out either. So now this is not the kind of rack that you want to be looking at when you're trying to come back from down 100 against the goat.
Yeah, no question. I would say, in response to the don't try to out Nigel thing, that you just want to, if you want to out Nigel, or whatever, however you want to say it, you just want to make your best play every turn as often as you can. And I really think that play was Ori's best play, especially at a deficit. Makes total sense. As long as Nigel does not have one of the very low number of hook tiles still remaining in the pool, that could hugely benefit Orry to make that spot. So there's no question that this was a case, in my mind, of absolutely right, dead on process by Orry. But in Scrabble, that is not a guarantee of great results. So I love that play on his part. Got to play aggressively, and you got to seize the advantage when it mathematically favors you, even knowing there's going to be exceptions where you might regret your choice in its outcome, but not in your process.
Yeah, I don't think we got time to sim that play because Ori played it very quickly, but I'll be stunned if that doesn't win a sim. I think it was 100% the right idea. And keep in mind, Nigel, after playing IID, kept an ID behind. It's certainly not a play that somebody's going to make with a bunch of clunky tiles, and that's the way you're probably going to get hurt the worst there. So meanwhile, Ori playing Fumir to the R in Jurats, which seems to be the right idea. You always hate blocking that R, but you want to keep within hailing distance and keep a very good leave. So I think this play is right.
Yeah, agreed. Drawing into that bag, maybe you pick up the last S or the second blank here. Orry is far from out of this game. Yes, it's true that Nigel is going to widen his lead with whatever he scores, but if Orry can get a bingo in short order, ideally, if he could figure out a way to do it without the blank and then draw the blank in some order, ooh, man, he's got decent tiles there, but it looks like maybe not the best for bingoing. Oh, look at that play. Look at this. That was gorgeous, Jason. That was a fantastic play by Nigel.
So obviously it doesn't work that way, but with the Jurat's Junta's choice, sure enough, if that N was an R, then Ori would have jeopardy from the J. But yeah, saw that play in Quackle's results and figured that Nigel would see that way to drop the H between the big and the T to make bite, and sure enough, he did it, and that was certainly his best play.
Yeah, that's just so nice. Nigel had only one vowel on his rack at that point, including the X. If we go back to that turn, yeah, he would have been able to play his X right here before Effa hit the board for 38 points, but that would have left him with 5 consonants, none of which do that much. But keeping your X, especially keeping AXIL on his rack, he kept XIL with all those E's still to come. All Nigel would have needed to do is draw an E, and he's hitting Axile for a huge score. I guess the X also qualifies. So just a phenomenal play by Nigel. Amazing board vision. What can you say? That was a really great play that I do not think that many people spot. And if they do, not as fast as he did. That's
always what's so impressive. And I guess that Jurat's, the the big space T was there for a while, but even then, um, to see it right away and to play it right away is I think one of the things that makes Nigel so incredible. I know in Albany, I suggested that maybe if under a 5 minute time limit instead of 25, that maybe Wellington becomes the best player in the world, and my co-commentator Matt Canick made it sound like I was being sacrilegious. So maybe, well, and I don't know, what do you have an opinion on that? Like if games were 5 minutes as fast as Wellington plays, but Nigel isn't exactly slow. Does Wellington become the best player in the world, or is it still Nigel?
It's a great question. I do feel that there is something about the way that Nigel generates plays that causes him to almost instantaneously, his first instinct is either the best play or the second or third best play, and he already has kind of seen the other relevant plays. There's just something about his play generation skill that is so otherworldly that I really think he would lose the least of anyone. Oddly, I feel like his biggest handicap to playing at a faster tempo of Scrabble, time control of Scrabble, would be he's just too cool of a cucumber to rush, throwing tiles onto the board the way that you kind of have to do when you're playing Blitz. That being said, Wellington is the same way, completely cool under pressure at all times, never seems very hurried at the table. So perhaps the two of them are cut from a very similar cloth. I would still lean towards Nigel in that debate, but Wellington is an incredible, fast playing, person to watch lose so little from his game when he goes into time rush mode. So in any case, Orry also managing his time pretty well here. He still has 13 minutes, even though he's had a lot of difficult decisions. And this is another difficult decision for him. Now, surely into the single digit area of winning percentage. But I said it before when we've watched Orry on stream. I can think of very few players who are better at coming up with creative comeback plans than Orry Swift. I hate feeling like I'm up by 100 points against him and yet somehow I'm still in danger. That is a very common feeling that I have going up against Orry. Not 100% sure what I'm doing if I'm him. Is he thinking about playing op here, which would be kind of crazy? But it actually might work out decently in this specific instance.
Yeah, sorry for derailing the conversation there. It's sometimes it's okay to do on an uninteresting right, but this is actually a quite interesting one. Do you have a preference here? I kind of like just plunking the YO along the AN of Santero, setting up your E, maybe ED stuff, stopping Nigel from from using that spot for himself. Maybe you kind of want Nigel to use that spot for himself since it opens the board. Yeah, what are you seeing in this spot, Will?
Yeah, this seems very standard. Playing YO here, keeping ED on your rack. If you draw a bingo ending in ED, it's going to slot there very nicely. I feel like there's a lot of reason to like that play. That being said, I do worry quite a bit that the bingo real estate on this board is dwindling rapidly. So I feel like Orry must be thinking about that, and it would be great, and that's probably why he's thinking about playing op. Even though this looks a little bit crazy, at least you now have another threat that needs to be dealt with in addition to the D of Irid or the S hook on Irids. And then, as marginal as they are, you've got two threats on the board, whereas if you play YO and Nigel responds with something sufficiently defensive right here, you are now looking at complete lockdown outside of maybe the U and J here. I guess the D is also open, but those bingos almost aren't what you want because you're giving up a triple in response when you hit them. So this is really tough. Orry is thinking hard about this. Another viable option could be something like apnea here, as frustrating as this would be to keep DOY. At least now you're getting some action on the board with some of these open lanes. and it's difficult for Nigel to block those spots and still score points. Another play could be die node right here. As nice as that would be to get rid of your Y and O, I don't love how the board looks after this. Even if you do bingo, it's likely to be here, which gives counterplay back to Nigel. So there are problems with everything, Jason. Not a great situation to be in if you are Orry Swift.
Yeah, there's usually problems with everything when you're down 108 against Nigel and you don't have a bingo on your rack. You were looking at Pandy. I think you I don't want to say had it set up, but I think you kind of had that play highlighted Pandy through the D and Irid. Is that looking like the best option? I mean, you hate drawing into OED, but that's another situation where I guess Nigel can probably make the right parallel play and um and then the board is pretty closed. And especially we know he has the X obviously, or he doesn't. So looks like he's close to a decision though, and his time is dwindling. So part of the reason to play toasting right away when you see it is when you fall behind like this, you kind of need the time to kind of figure out your comeback strategy.
Yeah, it looks like he's considering maybe Patty instead of Pandy, which seems okay as well. I'm trying to look around and see why would you rather keep the D here. I guess maybe it's because if you play Patty, that if you play Pandy instead, I should say, you're keeping ED and your bingos actually fit, whereas it's a little bit tougher to hit a bingo with the N. Looks like Orry is going to get set to play this, and this is going to allow Nigel to bomb his X. It's possible that from Orry's perspective, he's kind of hoping that maybe his 1-2 punch back into this game is to draw the X right now and then draw the second blank or a natural bingo somewhere. This could be opening that spot by design. And Jason, it is kind of difficult for Nigel to use his X there without giving something nice back to Orry. So I wonder, will he go ahead and just play the very natural ticks here for 55 points? And oh my God, look at that draw for Orry.
Yeah, that's a GG draw. That's a good game, Nigel. I don't see, especially after, like you said, Tix was actually going to give up a lot. There's a lot of bingos that Orry could draw into, especially in the ONE leave, which would have played even hooking the E onto Axe on the triple, scoring almost 100. But now Nigel's going to play Tix. He's going to open the spot, and you basically have ONE coming off of it, drawing into EEOO, and yeah.
Unreal.
I'll be very
Yeah.
curious as what does Quackle have his win percentage at here? It's I'm gonna guess like a 0.25%. That's pretty close.
Good
Actually.
guess. That's a
Yeah, pretty
great
close.
guess. You guessed that before I started analyzing it, and you are spot on that we're into the sub 1% here, unfortunately, for Orry. And this is just brutal, right? Like, how could Orry left EON and drew OOOE, which that, even with a pool that from Orry's perspective might have been a little vowel heavy. This is from, I guess, his perspective now after having drawn all those vowels. Yeah, you couldn't have expected something that terrible. And Orry, all right, Orry is basically saying, sure, why not? You've got a huge open spot. I'm gonna go for something else huge and pray that your tiles are as bad as mine. He might yet pick this up and say, God, can I really do this? This is a little bit insane, Jason. Yeah, Jason, but I guess there is a logic to it of, can I pray that Nigel has terrible tiles one time here?
Yeah, I like to call this suicide Scrabble. We're going the suicide Scrabble route, and
He's
it's
gonna
one of
pick it
those things
up.
he is
Yeah,
gonna
I
pick it up.
just
Yeah,
couldn't see him go through with that.
yeah, and I've commented before that Winston Churchill once said democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others, and that spread is the worst tiebreaker in Scrabble except for all the others, meaning that it's the best one, but it certainly has a lot of flaws, and certainly one of the flaws is that when Joe when you play Joe and it backfires on you, you're ruining your spread for the whole rest of the tournament. And I haven't seen exactly what Ori's spread is, compared to the rest of the field, but I think it's a little bit too early to do something like that. I think you just have to play one, take the spot. And again, I recently, recommended that somebody, start cutting spread when they were about to plunk down a 190-point triple triple to some turns later and take the lead. So I'm a little bit gun shy on saying this, but I think this is a point for Orry where you're just kind of trying to limit the damage from here.
Yeah, which hurts, right? Everybody is, I mean, this is definitely a factor too, where everybody going up against Nigel right now is trying to be the first to bring him down. So you want to go for broke if possible. Oh, look at this. Even crazier. Ori with an even crazier idea, trying to sort of distract long enough to somehow get an amazing draw. Either so Nigel probably would block this, and the plan there is to somehow dodge a big play down there, draw into a huge bingo here. Ideally, with all the overlaps, right? You want to hit all the way through to X if you're going to hit there. Again, these are crazy plans here, and the standard play at this point is probably just to play one right here. Orry is not giving up. He's going to play Joe. He has committed it. You see Nigel's clock running. So there you go. You can't say Orry is not giving it his all, Jason.
Oh yeah, and even though, like I said, it probably won't work, it'll probably just lead to spread destruction. My Scrabble mentor once said, if doing something is the only way you can win a game, then do it. And basically, your only way to win this game is to do something crazy, and so he's going to do something a little crazy.
So Nigel now has a couple options. I think he had been getting set to play Bloom right here, making Tay. Instead, he is going to shift over very quickly to his best option, using the Z and the B at the top of the board. Bezil for 63 points, and Orry trying LE, yet another E, which he had to know was very possible. There's just so many E's still to come in the bag. He was going to have to sort of dodge all of those to get two consonants in a very particular arrangement. So Nigel, oh, look at this. He's going back to Bloom, keeping the Z again. That's funny because I feel like he was really close to playing up high. I'm wondering, is the Z good enough in his estimation to keep here? You keeping it here because you draw an A maybe, but it's very interesting choice.
That's exactly what I was going to say. But now you've given Orry the chance to now do a variation on the theme. Now he's going to open up the triple triple. And maybe that's why Nigel did it. Maybe he saw this coming, a potential triple opening, putting the E there. And you draw, Zoe, something like that for 69.
He now has Azurite
off of Joe. Goodness me.
Oh my God, there it goes. He has it. So here's the crazy thing, right? Like Azurite up here, of course, it makes all the sense to play it up there, and you're probably going up by enough that even a triple by Orry wouldn't matter. But he's going to have to actually calculate this and just see, is there any way I can lose the game if I go ahead and play Azurite for 107, but then get hit for whatever, 300 points, Jason? I made a video about that happening to you at one point. So you are an expert on still winning, almost winning games where your opponent scores a 300-point triple. Nigel's got to at least think about that, but there's really I don't think there's no threat to him that's going to allow Orry to outrun him with a triple triple down low. That's my instinct. What is your instinct?
Uh, yeah, this whole game feels like it's trolled me right from the start. I mean, right from the ing word, whether it takes an S sort of thing. Like this seems like some sort of colossal joke. But yes, you pointed out that I did once almost win a practice game in which I gave up a 311 point triple triple. He's going to pass on Azurite. That pool, I did want to point out that pool is really good, especially with the blank. There are certainly triple triples that put the V there, maybe one that puts the W there, but I can't believe he passed on Azurite for that.
That's surprising. Yeah, I think he's definitely going to be fine if he plays Azurite there. Even the worst case triple triple doesn't really feel like it's going to threaten him that much. So I agree. I'm very surprised to see him pass up his enormous bingo, which he had spelled out on his rack. So he definitely saw it. Surprising decision. I would lean towards, perhaps that being, dare I say, a mistake by Nigel, but I think it's going to be all right for him. Of course, a good time to make a mistake like that is when you're winning by 200 points in your 18th game of a tournament in which you're 17-0.
Yeah, Alex Dings, who, by the way, since we're watching Nigel and this is kind of turning into a Nigel fest, has a great video on Nigel that is approaching 1 million views, not quite there yet. He did point out that overview is there, and naturally, I think I counted it as like in the 180s. So I still think after Azurite, overview is never going to work. I mean, then you're going to pull a bunch of good bingo stuff that may play to the D and Cindery. So I'm not going to go so far as to call that one a mistake, especially given Nigel's spread. It may be a spread hemorrhager, but given how far his spread is ahead of the rest of the field, I'm okay with that. I'm not willing to use the M word there.
So the situation after overview, if you play it as a natural, which it was in the pool as a natural, right? Azurite brings Nigel to 489. Overview brings Orry to 467, and he might draw the blank out of the bag after that, right? If you play natural overview, it is possible that Nigel could be facing a situation with 4 tiles in the bag and Orry having the second blank up by 22 points only, which that does actually seem pretty scary if you're Nigel. So
Yeah, I
maybe
somehow forgot to add the 50 somehow for the bingo. Yeah, it's 239.
Yeah, maybe some logic to it. Let me return to reality here where Nigel plays Ray Z and Lavo is the play for Orry. He's going to play up top. That's basically a throw in the towel play, which is, I think, justified at this point. Orry has given it a couple very reasonable tries to make something happen, and his head in his hands a little bit there. He's going to get one more crack. This is his first game with Nigel. Repeat matchups are going to begin starting next round. For those of you curious, the next round matchup for Nigel as he continues his rampage is a repeat against Jackson Smiley, who gave him everything he could handle until Jackson did not spot a key play of a 6-tile or a 5-tile overlap of a size for 94. That was where things started to go off the rails for Jackson in his first meeting with Nigel. But I think if anyone could nominate somebody to go up against Nigel and give him the absolute best battle possible, Jackson would be right at the top of the list. And he is coming at Nigel next round, Jason. Very, very exciting.
Yeah, we got a lot of talk about, can Nigel do it? Can he go 31-0? But I mean, if he gets through these 4, then there's only 10 left. He's going to be Gibsonized, with like 4 to play. Like how many players are totally out of money contention with 4 to play? So, or he does have ensnared, so he will make this a little bit more respectable, which is deserved. He played a good game and just got victimized by the tiles a little bit there. So he's going to play ensnare. But yeah, if Nigel gets out of this session, I think you have to really, really talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is the toughest challenge for him yet, for sure. going up against the number 5, number 2, number 3, and then number 5 seed again. If he runs the table with those 4, what can you really say? And meanwhile, his previous play of Vum holding the case O. Another little bit of Nigel being Nigel. He noticed that he had the last O on his rack, and he is now going to use it with a nice hook, assuming he can confirm that Orry doesn't have anything better. It's possible that, wait, is there something like crueling? Or I don't think that's a word, but there might be something that Nigel has to block here.
Yeah, I don't see it, but Nigel being Nigel, he's got they're stopping the clock for a scoring discrepancy or something. They just restarted
Oh,
it. So
okay. Yeah.
That is a good question.
Oh, sorry. No, the Q is not a G. I read this as a G for a second. I apologize. I don't know what I'm
Oh, okay.
talking about.
That's all right.
Yeah, I just misread the tile on my screen. So nothing Nigel needs to worry about there. He can just go about his business in the end game doing his normal thing. Sorry, everybody. So yeah, final looks like they were locating that final I guess, as well. Maybe already dropped it or something. But yeah, it doesn't look like Nigel will have much to worry about in this area of the board. Nothing really fits. Nothing really fits up here either, frankly. It's going to be very difficult to end something in a B. That's like the only realistic spot. So Nigel is in a relatively straightforward end game here. It's weird because it might be the case that he should not use his O hook at all if playing through this E winds up taking more points away from Orry. So is he going to pivot? It looks like the answer is yes. It's just amazing to see it every time. Never gets old, Jason.
Never gets old. Never gets old. He does have E now up there, but yeah, no disconnected 9s ending in Q, and apparently Orry dropped the I. That's why the clock was stopped. So other than that, we just kind of nailed these last couple of minutes. Who says we take our foot off the gas when the game's out of reach? We're still here providing A+ commentary. So
absolutely. So yeah, E now is almost certain to be Orry's play up there. But the thing about that is Nigel probably knows that. And if you see that E now going up here is going to score so nicely, by leaving AE on his rack, Nigel will be able to get a much higher scoring outplay through the V than he would have had otherwise. So it's all about the fact that he's scoring roughly as well as his plays hooking Ovum right now, and he's saving just the right tiles to counter Orry's best play with a much higher scoring outplay. That is the logic behind towing for Nigel here. Very impressive. Should Orry pivot to some other play, Nigel can play ace here for a pretty solid score as well. But E now is his best play, and Nigel is going to answer it with Ave underneath. And that's going to do it for another win. Nigel's 18th in a row. This is reaching an absurd level, Jason. I can't believe how far this has gone, and he's still trucking.
yeah, I would argue it was already at absurd, but then again, you once went 20-0 in a tournament, so your
Well,
standards are probably a little bit higher than the rest of us.
that was pretty friggin' absurd. So, he is poised to continue on past that. But again, going through Jackson, Joey Kravchik, and Orry a second time, very few people would look at that 1, 2, 3 series of matchups and say, oh yeah, I got 3 wins in the bank, right? Those are 3 extremely dangerous players, and we get the handshake here. Not sure if there's going to be too much post-morteming. I guess we can cut to the board and see what Orry has to say.
Look at some trolls toasting trout. Yeah, I had to catch it all. Yeah. I couldn't remember initially, but then I eventually summoned it. Yeah, just a bunch of O's and E's here. You can take the points, but I'm just giving up.
Did you have a 9?
Oh, this was,
I gave up my bingo.
I thought you might, yeah. That's definitely correct.
Results? I can't do the results.
Oh, I got it. I needed your B. I had Buckaroo. It's AUR.
All right. Looks like that's it for the post-morteming. I know we usually
Good luck
cut
on that.
once the oh, never mind. We usually cut once the tiles are starting to make that clacky sound. So yeah, very minimal discussion as is Nigel's want, and the tiles go back into their square. And I guess we just have little to do but wait for Jackson Smiley to finish his game, Jason. And that's a key game. If we just, I'm going to quickly head back to the standings and just do a little recap of who are the closest people chasing behind Nigel. Going into this game, Orry was in third place with a 12-5 record. He now drops to 6 games back of Nigel in first place. Joey Kravchik looks to be the closest of anyone to Nigel right now. Nigel moving to 18-0. If Joey were to have won his previous game, he would be at 14.5 wins. Still 3.5 games behind Nigel, but that is the closest person right now, which is crazy to think at this only 18 rounds into the tournament that the leader is 3.5 games up on his next closest competitor.
That is insane, especially in such a good field. I did find it interesting that I was curious whether he would point out that he had a bingo, Azurite specifically. So he did ask, like, could have left that open in hindsight, but I did find that interesting. That's the first time I've ever seen Nigel ask his opponent a question during the end game. Or post-mortem.
That's true. That is true. Not a lot of questions or curiosity about rehashing the game typically coming from him.